I want to make a bet right now. At some point during the Rugby World Cup 2019, at least one pundit, commentator, or knackered, brain-dead player will call a team at the heart of this video Namibia. Because even though Namibia has been a sovereign state in its own right for 29 years and a Tier 2 rugby staple since the 1999 World Cup, it's a nation that very few pay attention to, viewed as little more than a faulty vending machine bigger teams bash every 4 years, watching as points come tumbling out the bottom. It's a shame too, because there's so much to love about Namibia. Not only is it the real-life home of the desert from Mad Max Fury Road, but it's a country who viewed rugby as a means of showing itself to the world. Whilst football might be their most popular sport, Namibia's qualification for 5 straight Rugby World Cups makes the side the nation's most successful ever team, and something the whole country is nothing but proud of. Namibia was initially founded as a German colony in and around the Namib Desert before being invaded by South Africa in 1916. The South African soldiers introduced many things to Namibia: an iron-fisted rule, rampant discrimination, and of course rugby, which incidentally is Steve Diamond's 3 favourite things. Until a 23-year war, which disappointingly didn't feature a single man on a rig with a flaming guitar, saw them finally win their independence as a nation in 1990, Namibia ran as a club side. Going as South West Africa, the team frequently make the top 4 of the Currie Cup. And then, when Independence Day sprang around, that club team got to live Saracens' wet dream and was instantly promoted to being a test team, making them kind of like the Jaguares, if only Lavanini had got to take his aggression out in an actual war rather than just at the bottom of rucks. Starting off with a few games against not quite neighbour Zimbabwe and a touring Wales team, Namibia then made the world sit up and take note when in 1991 they beat Italy back-to-back in just their 8th and 9th test matches before backing it up with 2 wins over Ireland in matches 12 and 13. To this day, Namibia actually have a 50-50 win record against Ireland, meaning they won the same number in their last 4 against the Green Boys as New Zealand have. A sole loss to the Ivory Coast cost Namibia a slot in the 16-team 95 World Cup, but 4 years later, they made the cut, qualifying for the first of what will soon be 6 consecutive World Cups. And yet, over 19 tournament games across almost 20 years, Namibia are yet to win a match. Over those 19 games, they've conceded a total of 1,148 points. The vending machine proving it perhaps was slightly too overstuffed to begin with an average scoreline of 61-11 to the opposition, and the infamous 143-0 loss to Australia in 2003 still sat in the background. It would therefore be very easy to question whether Namibia deserved their place in the World Cup at all. But when they're beating sides like Tunisia 130-0 in qualifying, it's hard to argue against their inclusion, and instead, all the more worth celebrating exactly what the awesome desert nation of Namibia brings to the world's greatest showcase of rugby. And so, here, in handy list form, are my top 5 reasons why we should be so excited to see Namibia take the field in Japan this September. Lists of the greatest ever World Cup matches tend to be pretty samey. Articles designed to inform those who already knew that Joe Nalomi once ran over Mike Catt, Johnny Wilkinson once dropped a goal, Japan once beat South Africa, and France will always be so French. When what makes a World Cup so great is the endless oodles of smaller matches, 2 teams throwing everything at each other without ever glancing as far as the Tier 1 behemoth at the head of their pool. As such, the rugby hipster that I am, if I were to pick my top 10 Rugby World Cup matches of all time, Namibia versus Fiji in 2011 would make the list. It was a supremely entertaining game, a glorious clash of styles, as Fiji played jiggly sex rugby with offloading galore up against Namibia, a side more addicted to points than Phoenix Wright. At the same time as Fiji ran everything, Namibia just dropped goals from anywhere and kicked 3 points from their own half, desperate to accumulate. It was proper knife to a gunfight stuff, but Namibia made it a hell of a fight. And whilst Fiji ultimately romped home, that day Namibia showed us who they are. A team who gives everything and is unafraid to play rugby their way. Unarguably Namibia's greatest ever player, froth-head farmhand Jacques Burger became a cult hero over his 6 seasons at Saracens and 8 years as captain of his country. A fearless tackler and ferocious rucker, Burger probably didn't even know there was a ball, and yet made a name for himself as one of the finest flankers of his era. He won't be around this September, but he will stand tribute and inspiration for this year's side, because if he can become a household name in the overworld, so can they. Everyone loves an underdog, and whilst most dogfights this particular pitbull has been and still ends up with the dog getting shot in the face, that doesn't mean we haven't seen him take some bites out of the postman with a magnum he's facing. A few classy tries such as these, and the odd impressive feat. In 1999 they held France to 7-all until the half-hour mark, and their performance against Ireland in 2007 was enormously brave and entertaining, staying in touch with them until 15 to go. And they're staying in touch for longer and longer. With each World Cup, Namibia have averaged more points scored and fewer points conceded. In 2015, they reached an average scoreline of 17-43, despite having the All Blacks in their pool. In fact, they even managed to score this charming try against the All Blacks, crossing the creepy white line in all 4 matches, even scoring 3 against Argentina. However, most impressive was their ability to hold the Georgian hype machine to just a 1-point win, showing solid conditioning to fight back from 17-6 to 17-16, time beating them just as much as Gogodzo's gang. In fact, at the rate they're improving, Namibia are on track to win the 2055 Rugby World Cup. Namibia is the 3rd most sparsely populated country on Earth, the aforementioned awesome desert taking up 9% of the country's surface, and yet they have managed to produce quite a few useful players worth keeping an eye on ahead of this year's tournament. They have a few experienced campaigners, flanker Rowan Kitchoff, ever-solid centre Daryl Delaharpe, and double IRB Try of the Year nominee Chris Andebota, a counter-attacking fullback whose recent drop in pace has cost him none of his flair, having previously played in the Premiership and been nominated for the IRB Try of the Year in 2010 and 2014. However, I'd also urge you to keep an eye on a few younger players, including hooker Louis van der Westhuizen, a front rower capable of scoring tries and turning over the ball, lightning winger Leslie Klim, who's my 3rd favourite Leslie after Nope and Your Mum, 20-year-old Blue Bulls flanker Prince Gauseb also qualifies for mention on the basis that his name has an exclamation mark in it. Like, that isn't a typo. His name has an exclamation mark. His name actually has an exclamation mark in it. For the first time ever too, this year Namibia are not the lowest rated team in their pool, with the flagrant shit show that is Canadian rugby stinking up the bottom of their pool this year, giving Namibia potential hope for a first ever World Cup win. However, beyond that, the pool is very tough. Having drawn 3 Tier 1 nations, including both the All Blacks and the Springboks, there's bound to be a moment where the floodgates swing open and life for fans of the underdog might feel as bleak as the desert Furiosa once rampaged through. But no matter how many points that vending machine does kick out, there will always be more than enough reasons to celebrate the awesome desert nation that is Namibia. Shit! These post-video chat bits are basically redundant at this point, but it's just a chance for me to check in and ask, how are you? How are the kids? How's Leslie? Etc. Thank you for watching that. Thank you especially to everyone that supports the channel on Patreon, and you make it possible to continue doing this in the way I do. That is part 8 of an ongoing series on every team in the Rugby World Cup, which means there's obviously 7 more floating around the channel. The handy playlist will pop up below me at some point soon. That means there's obviously 12 more to go. So there's going to be another one next week. I'm trying to stick to weekly uploads, so we'll see how that goes, and I'll see you then. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye!